India-Pakistan war seems to have moved to an ideological war of sorts here at home. Not just has there been unseemly politics break out between the BJP and the Congress, there is now a furor and a furious debate around the comments made by Ashoka University professor Ali Mahmudabad, who was arrested for a social media post on Operation Sindoor. The Supreme Court today granted bail to the professor but took sharp exception to the comments made by Professor Mahmudabad. I'm Barkhadat, you're with the Mojo story. On the program today, we look at the Supreme Court's response to the arrest of Professor Ali Mahmudabad. Ali Mahmudabad, who was briefly with the Samajwadi Party for some time, is the head of political science at the prestigious Ashoka University. He finds himself behind bars and in custody while now out on interim bail after his comments on Operation Sindoor, in particular comments on Colonel Sophia Qureshi and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh, who were the two military officers who were the face of Operation Sindoor before India and the rest of the world for several days. Ali Mahmudabad referenced this to be optics. Welcome optics, he said, but then he went into other areas that today the Supreme Court described to be the language of dog whistling. There's been a sharp division and a debate around Ali Mahmudabad's post, but almost everybody that I've seen across the different aisles did not agree with his arrest. His arrest in particular has been contrasted with the fact that Madhya Pradesh BJP Minister Vijay Shah, who used a communal slur for Colonel Sophia Qureshi, has in fact not been arrested. But the Supreme Court and the same judges, in fact, have asked for an SIT, a special investigative team, to probe the allegations against both men, the BJP minister in Madhya Pradesh and the Ashoka University professor Ali Mahmudabad, to talk about the larger issues that are thrown up by this arrest, but also to talk about whether it's the kind of messaging that India needs at a time when cross-party delegations are traveling to different global cities to talk about the huge military triumph of Operation Sindoor, as well as the world's turning away from Pakistan's patronage of terrorism and the elevation of Asim Munir to Field Marshal. I want to introduce our guests on the program today. Joining me on the program is Senior Advocate Percival Villamoria. Welcome to the program. Also joining me after a long time, we welcome back Sandeep Ghosh, political analyst, somebody I often introduce as a fan of the Prime Minister with conditions and caveats, which sounds a bit like the bail that the Supreme Court has given Ali Mahmudabad today. Lots of conditions and caveats in that as well. And also joining me is Sanjay Hegde, a senior advocate. Good to see you, Sanjay, also after a long time. Let me actually start with you, Percival Villamoria. How do you look at the Supreme Court's decision in granting bail, but taking such strong exception to the comments that were made by Mr. Mahmudabad?
First and foremost, I have a lot of difficulty accepting, the fact that somebody has been arrested for a social media post. Fundamentally. Now, in this case, now every case is a little different and we have to look at it closely. So here, this gentleman, I think his post shows some grandstanding at the wrong time. It also shows how deeply ideology has crept into our academia. So if you look at his post, first of all, there was that little module on why war is bad. He says, political conflicts have never solved anything, have never been solved militarily. I don't know what world he's living in, because in fact, that is the issue. I mean, if you have a political conflict, ultimately it is solved only militarily. Otherwise, we would not have had a successful end to the Second World War. It is only because Mr. Hitler was absolutely crushed politically as well as militarily that we have a very different world than would have been the case otherwise. It's only the conflicts that are not carried out to the ultimate, logical conclusion where, it is not necessarily the solution. He also does not offer an alternative solution to the situation that we face. there's a long list of instances where we have had cross-border terrorism. I remember 2008 particularly because I'm originally from Bombay, and I
Hmm.
lost friends and some of my mentors who were shot in cold blood. So you see, the question in my mind has always now been, how long can we endure? It was, I think, Ziaul Haq who spoke about death by a thousand cuts. And it's from the late 1970s that this policy has been going on. And at some point, the cost of adopting this policy has to be a deterrence. And I think that is why there was no option but to commence hostilities here. Because what else are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to write letters? Are we supposed to, complain to the UN, and then it's just one more headline after the news cycle, it is forgotten? So I think I am one of those who fall in the group of people who believe that, I'm sorry, but we are not left with any other alternative.
Hmm.
Now, in this case, there was, I mean, look, nobody likes war. War is a very brutal business. It can, result in, mutual destruction. Young people die. It is very unfortunate. But then please tell us what we are to do as a nation in this situation. Just grin and bear it? No. And there was a lot of, see, when the notice that was issued by the women rights organization, he could have just replied to that notice. Instead, there is a public statement. Now that smacked of a little grandstanding. So in a way, some of his statements do have uh, whispers, at least, of, I don't see anything fundamentally wrong
Hmm.
with these statements if they are made in a normal time. And I think what also rankled with the Supreme Court is the period when it was made. Because look, we were warned by our government and military authorities. Some of the comments that are being made on social media are being amplified in Pakistan by their media to our detriment. And I think it was probably the wrong time to raise these issues. The fact
Yeah.
that he has an opinion that may differ from mine and he's entitled to raise it is separate. It's quite a different situation altogether.
So if I were to summarize your position, you seem to say that his comments are rankling and irritating and perhaps tone deaf for the moment of war, for a wartime situation. But you don't agree that he should have been arrested, because that is really sort of the heavy hand of the state.
Yes, but given the fact that we were in a situation of a military conflict,
Hmm.
and also given the fact that, and I think this weighed heavily on the minds of the judges, and you referred to the comment by Justice Surya Khan on dog whistling. I think this
Yeah.
is exactly what he meant, which is when you allude to internal political issues, which can be picked up by the opponents and amplified to a point where they are in a situation to divide Indian society. It was of utmost importance for Indian society to be together. And I think the fact that we had these young ladies out there who were the messengers for us was a brilliant strategy.
Yeah. Let's come to Sanjay Hegde, and we'll also, when it comes to the women and Colonel Qureshi and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh, we'll also talk about what the Madhya Pradesh minister did, and the fact that there was also this perception that the law was quick to jail um, Ali Mahmudabad, but not to jail Vijay Shah. And there's also a question, Sanjay, whether anyone should be jailed for speech, whether Vijay Shah or, in this case, Ali Mahmudabad. But if you look at how the Supreme Court has responded today, Justice Suryakant has said this: the language was dog whistling. He has said that there was a deliberate attempt. In fact, let me in fact read out the comments here that there was a why try to gain cheap popularity. This is one of the things that the court actually said. The choice of words were deliberate and they were made to insult, humiliate, and cause discomfort to the other side. The judge then went on to say these seemed to be anti-war comments and this was not needed at a time when the country was actually at war. I think what Percival is arguing is that normal rights don't apply in wartime, and the Supreme Court approached it through that lens. How did you see how the Supreme Court responded today, granting the professor bail, but coming down heavily on his language and his post, and has also instructed him that he cannot comment on Operation Sindoor or the Pahalgam terror attack while he's out on bail?
Well, in 1948, Lord Atkin once said, "In this country, amid the clash of arms, the laws are not silent. They may be changed, but they speak the same language in war as in peace." You either have the right to free speech or you do not. This argument that during these times of war that certain rights are suspended is the same argument that during the emergency your right to life is suspended. That the right to life is only a gift of the Constitution, and if it is suspended in the Constitution, you don't have a right to life. 4 judges of the Supreme Court, 4 out of 5 judges of the Supreme Court of those days said yes. One brave judge said no. That judge was H.R. Khanna. He lost the Chief Justiceship for that. Of the 4, Justice Y.V. Chandrachud's judgment was later overturned by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. So I don't think, subscribe to this theory that you may have rights at some point of time and you may have you don't have those rights at other points of time.
But if I may interject,
free speech, just one minute. Free speech is required for unpopular speech. You don't need free speech protections to praise the Prime Minister. So if freedom has to mean anything at all, you must at all times be able to say that 2 + 2 makes 4.
Okay, can I ask my question now? I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
The Constitution also restricts all of our freedoms, right? There is a reasonable restriction as the language goes. Now, would you not concede? And again, I personally think that there was no need. There was no basis to arrest Professor Mahmudabad, irrespective of how grating his comments may have been to some and agreeable his comments may have been to some. I also think there's no need to arrest Madhya Pradesh Minister Vijay Shah, but I think BJP should sack him or suspend him. So I don't think we should be going around locking people up for speech unless it incites violence. That's one thing I would like to say. However, my question to you is, in wartime, everywhere in the world, there are restrictions which are different from peacetime restrictions. Everywhere in the world, for example, we had an advisory out from the Information and Broadcasting Ministry this time as journalists. Please don't, for example, deferred visuals, no live broadcasts, not showing troop movement, right? Not doing anything that would enable the adversary in any way. So my argument to you, Sanjay, is that emergency years are not comparable to wartime. And just because this war halted after 4 days doesn't mean that it was any less of a war when it was happening.
No, we're not on the length of the war.
Correct.
We are on. My point is about the existence of the right. Where you spoke about reasonable restrictions. Those restrictions, if they eat up the right, are no longer reasonable. And my particular take is that all that the Constitution says is that you have the right of free speech, but you also have laws with regard to defamation, with regard to contempt of court, with regard to friendly relations with foreign countries. Those laws are reasonable restrictions which can be imposed on which process can be imposed on your speech. So supposing you say something which is out of line, you can be taken to court for defamation. You can even be tried for criminal defamation. And there, after a court process, if you are fined, if you are sent to prison, or if you are asked to pay compensation, that's perfectly reasonable. But if you have a situation where you are told that no sooner that you speak, that some tin pot dictator with a small fiefdom in some state or the other can go and file an FIR and the police of that state can pick you up, and thereafter you have to beg courts for bail, then the question is, do you have any rights at all? Do you have rights on sufferance?
Okay, I think Percival has an interjection on the legal point, and then I want to come to Sandeep about the messaging. There's also a thing called tactics, strategy. What do you want to message? Percival, go ahead.
So just a quick interjection. I don't believe I ever made the case that under this situation, the rights ought to have been curtailed. In fact, my very first statement was that I have great difficulty accepting a situation where somebody is arrested for a post on social media. What I was saying is that the situation was such that it required maturity and self-restraint in the post. And I think what rankled with the Supreme Court is very apparent. When the Supreme Court talks about dog whistling, it's very apparent because, what weighed heavily with them is the fact that given the situation and the context in which these comments were made, that self-restraint in terms of local politicking was not exercised.
So let me ask both of you very quickly, and then Sandeep, are you, Percival, in agreement with how the Supreme Court handled it today?
Absolutely, because Supreme Court has granted interim bail, so nobody should be locked up. But at the same time, the Supreme Court has said that, look, let us investigate, because I think, there is some sense that there may be something a little more if you scratch below the surface. And then, there's a SIT that has been convened, and, the interim bail has been granted. So, the Supreme Court clearly believes that there may be something here much more than meets the eye, and it needs to be looked at.
I have a question about
freedom.
I have a question about both the SITs ordered by the Supreme Court. But Sanjay, the same question to you. Do you agree with how the Supreme Court handled the case today?
Well, I did not find it surprising considering what it had done with Ranveer Allahabadiya in the Nupur Sharma case, as well as in the Vijay Shah case. So the idea of having a SIT with officers from outside the state, and then we will see what a neutral report comes, and then we will process it further. That is not surprising. But am I disappointed with the attitudes of judges? I have been disappointed for a long time, and it is irrespective of whether this judge or that judge. Way back during the Congress regime, there was an FIR against Professor Ashish Nandi for something he said at the Jaipur Literary Fest. Chief Justice Altamash Kabir granted him bail, and then immediately thereafter told his counsel, Dr. So-and-so, please tell your client to be more careful. So my point is that if you have the right to free speech, which the judges are constitutionally bound to protect, then you protect it regardless of the content of the speech, regardless of whether you like it or don't like it.
Right. So, Sandeep, there's a free speech debate, and on free speech, India actually has no absolutism. You can find every government under which a book has been banned, somebody has been restricted, a police has arrested somebody. All the way, the entire ideological spectrum is covered, all the way from Nupur to Ranveer to Ali Mahmudabad. So, that is a larger debate for another time. My question to you right now is Operation Sindoor messaging, right? So if I were to look at it, 3 things have happened in the last week that I personally think are completely breaking the unity that the country had shown in the immediate aftermath of Pahalgam terror attack and the operation that followed. One has been, and I'm on record criticizing this, Rahul Gandhi is suggesting that Jaishankar leaked war plans. I think the opposition has every right to ask questions, but this is not even a serious question, and it feeds into the Pakistani narrative. The second is Vijay Shah of Madhya Pradesh using a communal slur for Colonel Sophia Qureshi. And the third is the arrest of Ali Mahmudabad. From a messaging perspective, at a time when these delegations are traveling to global cities, the Western media is already either ignorant, insular, hostile, detached. They're going to pick up, these are the stories they're going to tell. The stories of Pakistan's backing of terrorism are going to fall off the headlines even more. Isn't it Forgetting for a moment ideological divide and differences, isn't it poor messaging?
Bhaka, when you're talking about the larger messaging, I think that's really a matter of larger debate. And these three instances, I don't think really exemplifies the whole thing. I would not put Rahul Gandhi's statement at the same
No, I'm not putting them at the
level.
same level. I'm just
Level.
rattling. I'm
So
not
there,
putting them at the same level at all, but I'm just in no
yeah,
particular order
then
giving these
so
examples.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there are lots of things happening, which, as you said, are both regrettable, they're flummoxing, they're whatever you want to call intriguing as to why after this whole thing. I personally believe the Pakistani Aam Janta have moved on in the sense that they've accepted whatever their government or people have said, so their life carries on. These sort of things happen. Internationally, we are much more sensitized because people like you and me read international media. But from whatever I gather when I speak to friends in America, etc., the arm American or the arm, they're really not really clued on as to what's happening. It's only those who are reading the WAPO, the
Mm-hmm.
Wall Street Journal, and economists. They are, and we are also. We are therefore we get prickly. But it's really inside the country this very funny debates which is going on even today, that okay, please give list of how many aircrafts have done and how much you have spent to bring down their missiles versus. That's bizarre. That's entirely a different problem. Now, when you're talking of this particular case, I think here what I find is conflating the two issues about his making a comment on the Colonel Safia Qureshi, which has been used by the Women's Commission, etc. It's almost like hauling somebody up for a parking ticket when you can't prove something else. The other issues, as Percy has said, those are, I think, much more moot. And there, whether you are talking of a warning or you're talking of taking some kind of restraining action, that would now, having done this, what has happened? You hear today another politician, I was hearing a very vocal MP speaking to another newspaper in an interview, saying that, oh, he has been arrested only because he's a Muslim. So it has now, the discourse has gone to a different level. And then when you're comparing, I'm not justifying this Vijay, but the Madhya Pradesh ministers thing, then it becomes a Hindu versus Muslim thing. Okay, there is a Hindu politician has done it, you're not doing anything to him and this. So where are we going away from the moot point? But as
Well, this is my point. We need neither of these controversies at this moment of
absolutely.
conflict. We don't need them.
But more importantly, another larger point, Barkha, today, uh, as ordinary citizens, you, me, you are far more careful, you are far high profile. We are today afraid of what kind of comment we are making where. Just to share, I don't know whether your people have said, I was a bit wary about coming on this show. I asked them what kind of discussion we. I know in another channel or other channels, if they called me, I would have turned down immediately because I knew it would be either a political slugfest or it would become a Hindu-Muslim a communal issue. And in that situation, whatever you say or you don't, you'd be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow somebody else goes to court and files a complaint. That's what's happening every day, and people are choosing. So we are weaponizing these machineries. And that is where it's not just a matter of freedom of speech. I think you are just totally stifling public discourse. Sure, a lot of things which people say may not be parliamentary, or may not be in good taste, etc. And there are ways to pull them back. But now, in doing, but that's also the nature of the beast. As soon as you open up the discourse on social media, some of that will happen. Now you strain them, and I am not aware of, on such frivolous grounds across the world, even for statements made which are perceived to be anti-state or anti-anything. So many people get hauled up,
Oh,
or,
agreed. All
or
I was arguing with Sanjay was that wartime is not the same as Indira Gandhi's
so,
emergency,
so
but there
therefore
is no way that we should be justifying the arrest of people. Like I think we are all in unanimity that that speech, unless it incites violence,
the two
I think the
things that you
Supreme Court has said
yeah,
that the speech, unless it incites violence, cannot be a basis for arrest. Let us be upfront and say that.
that, and we cannot perceive as talking of ideology getting into academia. I think ideology was always there in academia. It is politics which is getting in, and people are using the academia or the cover as academics to play their own politics. That is the bigger issue. And I think there, by whatever word, whether it's Altamas Kavi telling Ashish Nandi's lawyer, let him be careful, because I think that wasn't also, maybe he was alluding to the politics of it. And even here, it is so. And this gentleman, as you know, he has a political past. So these things, I think these ground rules have to be stated. Even very, very senior counsels, when they're representing them, they need to also put this in perspective rather than take a line because they have a certain political belief themselves, also project it as a very political communal issue, etc. Rather than putting the perspective as what,
Okay.
say, Sanjay is saying, that, okay, there is free speech, there is the other things, so deal with it on merits.
Let's get reactions to that. I'll come to Percival and then to Sanjay. Sandeep is saying that there's a kind of unfortunate discourse which has become a Hindu Muslim conversation around whether it's the Madhya Pradesh minister. But by the way, he did use a communal slur, and this Ali Mahmudabad arrest, where several people have said on social media that, oh, he's been arrested because he's a Muslim. This has led now to some deep profiling of Ali Mahmudabad. Who was he on his father's side? Who was he on his mother's side? And people are cherry picking the details that actually suit their argument. So there are those who are saying, oh, his father fought to reclaim property under the Enemy Properties Act. There are those who are saying, oh, his mother was the daughter of India's former foreign secretary, Jagat Mehta. It's gone into a kind of bizarre territory. Whether he's Hindu or Muslim, whether his grandfather, funded the Muslim League, or his mother was the patriotic, proud daughter of India's foreign secretary, how does it matter? Nobody should be arrested for speech. Like, that is the bottom line. Nobody should be
Correct.
arrested for speech.
Correct. That's completely incontrovertible. And I think everyone on this panel will probably agree with that.
Yeah.
The only thing that I was trying to say that look at a time like this, see, when you have young people going out to the border,
Yeah.
putting themselves and their lives at risk, I think they need to know, they deserve to know that the country is standing with them, the entire nation in unity is standing firmly behind them.
Yeah.
Now, what happened at this point of time is there were several people, some of my friends, some people I admire greatly, coming up and saying, "Oh no, war is bad," but nobody really came up with an explanation as how do we continue to accept a situation where people can waltz into my country at short notice or without notice, kill people indiscriminately and go away. And you see, the issue now is very clear. The entire Pakistani army survives only on an anti-India agenda. So, what is the ultimate long-term solution? It's one of the big challenges of our times.
Yeah.
But when we are facing this challenge, I think the professor ought to have been a little more mindful of this particular criteria, and instead of grandstanding and he should have curbed his political instinct. I think that's what many other people did. I mean, there were people, in the opposition who came up and did well by the country by their remarks. And these are
Yeah.
just the odd exceptions, but ultimately the price for that cannot be incarceration.
Yeah, I think that's quite well put, and I want to get Sanjay and Sandeep both to respond to it. I think this idea of, soldiers, young men and women at the front line of battle, deserving to know that the country stands with them. There was this particularly heartbreaking image I saw of a mother in Punjab going to drop her young 21-year-old son, and Agniveer, by the way, to the front for the she's sending him off to the army. And then he dies in firing in Kashmir. Right now, I'm talking about a recent development. And I remember posting that day, and I was on the ground reporting that, can we please all stop our intellectual armchair, fanciful grandstanding till this operation is over? Because there are young men and women at the front line, and they are losing their lives in the line of duty for us. So we can postpone this debate. A debate can be postponed. I think there is something about that Percival is suggesting, and maybe that's what the Supreme Court was trying to say today. How do you react to that, Sanjay?
Well, I think the Supreme Court or whoever else uh, tend to take soldiers a bit too lightly. Some of the best anti-war poetry was written by soldiers like Rupert Brooks, who were in the trenches in the First World War. So, I- what a soldier feels, what he doesn't feel, is another thing. The question is, why does just like the soldier guards us on the border, we as a country are entitled to have our judges fiercely defend the liberties of the citizen. If our judges say that no, liberty is on sufferance, liberty depends on whether we think you're a good boy or not, then there are so many other calculations which will come into the field, including people wondering, okay, maybe we can get off by arresting these people, but no, we will not arrest this man because this one may cause too much of a trouble. Liberty for one citizen is liberty for all citizens. It has to apply equally
So,
across the
so I
board,
think, so I think we all
and our
agree that
courts
this
are charged
arrest.
with it.
So I think
I'm sorry.
we all agree, at least on this program, I don't know about anybody else, that Professor Mahmudabad should never have been arrested, but we can still have a debate around his post, which is a different debate. And that's the route that the Supreme Court chose to go down on. Sandeep, what did you make of that? And what do you make of what's happening, for example, with this Madhya Pradesh minister? Why are we sorry? I know. In both cases, the court ordered an SIT. But I might ask: is this how our police should be spending its time, investigating this Vijay Shah statements and Ali Mahmudabad statements? I mean, it's this all seems a bit. You can disagree as Percival does, or many other people may, with the language used by Ali Mahmudabad. But do both these men need an SIT?
The SIT on in Mahmudabad's case is what Percy was saying, that, I don't know if they have, it'll be justified only if they think there is something more to it than meets the eye, to use his language, or scratching the surface. If there is any such inferences, then it is. But otherwise, as you are saying, appointing SITs is quite meaningless, as we have seen in SITs being appointed in much bigger issues. So that is, I think, your point is totally taken, that those seem like just ticking the box kind of exercise. But if in this particular case there is something more which might come out later, I think we'll have to reserve our judgment for that. But I am very disappointed, first of all, by the political class. But that's not a surprise, that the way they have reduced this whole thing, instead of being an India-Pakistan war, it has been reduced to a Congress,
Absolutely.
BJP, and that
Absolutely.
sort of a thing. And I have with due respects to Sanjay, I have my disappointment also with the judiciary, my judiciary as in the lawyers, the legal fraternity, that this kind of dissection which we were doing now, that sort of dissection or statesmanship should also come in the court. You see, why are we leaving it for the judges to distinguish the two things and make that point? I would think even the lawyer for the plaintiff should also make a similar point. In fact, in a different case, I don't want to get into it, where I think today a much more junior lawyer in a lesser court in a similar case has one hand accepted that certain things should not have been said and not said, and took them off, and there are other points he has asked for time to debate later on. So similarly, that kind of a perspective needs to be taken. It cannot be immediately play the victim card, get into the communal card, etc., because that way we are also vitiating the larger atmosphere. And people know that if I run to ABC, he was going to take, because it's an anti-government line, he's going to take it and he's going to make a political issue out of it.
I think this polarization is something we should address, because it has infected the media, it has infected the judiciary, it has infected the bar associations, it has, of course, infected politics. And we have seen a very valiant effort in the immediate days after the operation for the country to really speak as one. But unfortunately, that's begun to fray at the edges with this sort of trivialization. I want to take last comments from Sanjay and Percival now. Sanjay, I'll start with you. I mean, the point Sandeep makes that don't immediately bring religion into it. Don't immediately like hold that, because Asim Munir is anyway preceded Pahalgam with making some cock and bull speech about Hindus and Muslims and two nation theory. So, that pause, that choose your words carefully in a time of war or near war. Don't say anything that can be picked up by your adversary. Arrest. There's no question of arrest. But since we're debating how we should all express ourselves, what do you think about that?
Well, let me quote a lawyer and a magistrate, Akbar Allahabadi. हम आ भी करते हैं तो हो जाते हैं बदनाम, वो कत्ल भी करे तो चर्चा नहीं होती. So that's the problem. A small thing was blown out of proportion, and those who blow it out of proportion will possibly be rewarded by this dispensation. Now, after you put a person in prison, how are you to expect that person to say, no, I will accept whatever you have said? No. You have hardened attitudes. And since there is, what shall we say, there is an incentive now for further whatever her name is, little tin pot dictators of little fiefdoms all over India.
You mean the Haryana
Yes,
State
yes,
Women
yes.
Commission head?
Yes,
whose name I have to say, Renu Bhatia, whose name I did not know till before this.
Yes,
this
exactly.
week.
So now there will be many more of all these small tin pot dictators over several fiefdoms, all saying, okay, let's catch X or let's catch Y. This particular post I don't like, and off to the police station I go, and my policeman will go and pick up this man.
Right. So this weaponization, I think we're all against. I think all four of us are against this. But let me get last thoughts from Percival. I think Sanjay Hegde is alluding to a sort of double standard in how the law responds. If I'm not wrong, it was the same bench that looked at both cases, right? It was Justice Suryakant in both cases. So he has responded with his template, which is an SIT. That is his template. He has announced an SIT for Vijay Shah in Madhya Pradesh. He's announced an SIT here. So he is going to make the argument that he's been consistent with both. Your thoughts, Percival?
I think he's, apart from bringing in an SIT, he's also said that one member will be a female member, and to ensure that there is some sense of neutrality, some propriety to the body that goes into it. SITs are not necessarily committees which are just the executive normally uses to push something under the carpet. SITs are serious teams that can apply their minds and come up with a proper documented report in a very short period of time. So I think here the idea may also be that instead of telling the police to carry on with its investigation, to dispose of the matter as soon as possible, because I think it's a rather unpleasant situation to deal with, and the sooner that this is put to bed, the better. I also just want to say one more thing, Barkha, very quickly, if you have time. During this unfortunate period in May, there were a lot of people who were pontificating, if I may use that word, and saying that, look, you don't know what war is, you are armchair critics. And I think the good professor in this case did indulge in a little bit of that. I think at one stage he suggested that, well, these proponents of war consider it to be a video game. And, I take exception to that comment because, as I said, I think he misread the deep anger and frustration of the Indian people around what has happened. See, we've always had indiscriminate terrorism for a very long time. I think this was a game changer because, the manner in which these people were killed showed that there was some religious aspect to it. And I think it is only to the credit of the Indian people that we maintain communal harmony at that difficult point of time. And the fear always was that our Western neighbor will try to affect that communal harmony. And I think if you look at the comments of the professor in that light, that also is something to be a little concerned about. I'm not saying that he did it deliberately or that there was some ulterior motive behind it, but I do believe that a little more restraint and maturity would have gone a long way.
Let me give the last word to Sandeep if you want to add your voice to, I don't think there's an essential disagreement on this program. I think the disagreement is only over how he expressed himself at a time when the country was seething with anguish and anger, and there were actually real lives being lost at the border, at the front line of this conflict. Very young lives were being lost. So a certain sensitivity, I think, was called for. But just where do we go from here? Because in both cases, police officers will now investigate the charges. And yet, I suspect that when our delegations travel abroad, they might be questioned on these things instead of on Pakistan's terrorism, which is why I find this whole thing so wasteful and such an unnecessary, distraction. Quite apart from the fact that I think no one should be arrested for speech.
See, that point is well taken, but as we said, these are distractions. These are not only distractions. I don't think it reflects the country in any good light. But the police action, I would justify only if, as I repeated, as Percy said, if there is something more to it that which we don't know, or the judges may have figured out, or the prosecution or may have told the court. So there would be justified. But otherwise, this discourse has to be set right by society and the leading voices, influences, which includes, I repeat, lawyers, our legal fraternity, because rather than just defending people, like Sanjay only once taught me the term of being a New York cabbie. You don't refuse anybody who wants to get onto your car as long as he pays your fees. Or sometimes they don't even pay the fees. You don't do that. You have to also, throw the light. So that needs to happen. And in this particular case, there is certainly the politics, as Percy, by quoting, has pointed out. But we needed to sift the two. And as I said, by making that comment on the ladies, it was almost like the parking ticket offense, rather than addressing the larger issue, which probably could not be addressed, in legal terms to pin somebody down.
All right. I think the debate will continue over Professor Mahmudabad's view and his manner of expression. I should say, to be fair to Justice Suryakant, that even when it came to the Madhya Pradesh minister, he was very scathing and he rejected the apology. Sanjay, you wanted to come in? I was just saying he rejected the apology and he said the entire country is ashamed of you. So we should say that Justice Kant and Suryakant has tried to be very consistent, I would say, in his handling. Or do you agree or do you not agree? Sanjay, last word quickly.
To some extent, I agree with you. I wanted to be fairer to him.
Yeah.
You see, the ASG wanted some more time to answer all this. And he wanted it on Friday or thereafter, which would have meant that Mahmudabad would have continued in jail.
Yeah.
So one way of cutting short all that was to have was what Justice Suryakant did, was to grant him immediate bail, but subject to an SIT. There is a difference between the two SITs, Barka, because of that, the Madhya Pradesh SIT, that man was not arrested. Whereas here, this is an SIT after the arrest.
No, I see that difference and I flagged that difference in the beginning. And I personally think neither person should be arrested, but I think the Madhya Pradesh minister should have been suspended by his party. Ashoka University will have their own way of handling how they want to tackle Professor Mahmudabad, which is a whole different debate. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? My submission that, or Sanjay's argument, Percival, that the two cases weren't handled in an identical way because one man was arrested and the other wasn't?
There is definitely a difference. I don't know whether that difference is material enough to say that the cases were not handled with some equity.
I think by the Supreme Court, possibly they were, but the debate will continue. Sanjay Hegde does point out that Justice Suryakant did take the route of immediate interim bail. So that should be underlined. But the last word on this, I have a feeling, has not yet been spoken. It'll be interesting to see what both SITs come up with, and we'll have all of you back then. Thank you, Percival Bilemoria, Sanjay Hegde, and Sandeep Ghosh. Thank you and take care.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.